Hello, hello, hello. This is the IBJ podcast. You got me, Isaiah Leonard, and my two co-hosts today. We have Faith Rasmussen and Queleah Collins, our new co-host coming in. This is very exciting. I hope all you guys are ready for Thanksgiving. I'm about to have some good food. I know I'm excited. My grandma's already cooking. She's already getting the food together. So we were just talking about that earlier. How you guys feeling about Thanksgiving?
I'm excited. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Like you said, my grandma done told me the list of food that we're about to eat. I'm ready. Yeah.
I love to hear it. So we're going to start out with our mission statement just to remind you guys about what we're all about. So the IBJ mission, the purpose of the Institute of Blackjustice is to relentlessly pursue equity and justice for all. The IBJ mission is threefold: to be an advocate for fairness and equity, to be an accelerator of the justice system transformation, and to be an accomplice to credible social justice influencers and the communities that they serve. And so one of the biggest things we're going to be talking about today is the Manny Ellis case, and give you guys a quick little update on that. What's been going on? There's been a lot of stuff, a lot to keep up with. So we understand if you haven't been able to watch, but this is just the more recent things that have been happening. So the defense, they brought up Manny Ellis's past challenges with mental health and previous interactions with the law enforcement in the trial of 3 Tacoma police officers who were charged with his death. Attorneys also called 2 witnesses who said they did not see officers kick, punch, or choke Ellis. And if you needed a reminder, Manny Ellis is a 33-year-old African-American man who died in Tacoma police custody March 3rd, 2020. This past week, the prosecution is saying he couldn't breathe due to the officers, and that's why his heart stopped. The defense witness is saying that he had bad health, his heart stopped, and then he couldn't breathe. Defense has been successfully swaying the judge to allow character evidence to be used in the Manny trial. The prosecution was also bringing in expert witnesses to contradict what the prosecution experts were saying. So the defense was bringing in expert witnesses to contradict what the prosecution's experts were saying. If you want to learn more about how you can support the Ellis family, they have a GoFundMe to provide assistance to the family until a verdict is reached, or the ACE's fellow Faith has been recently attending our ACE's fellow Faith has been recently attending the in-person trial. And many of us have been following along online. And so we love to hear more about what it's been like inside the courtroom and things of that nature. So, yeah. First question we wanted to ask Faith. Faith, do you want to give a little brief overview of what it's been like for you inside the courtroom?
Yeah. So I've been there, I believe, 2 separate times in the courtroom in person. And first off, a lot of the people who were also attending are community reporters. So that was very interesting, talking with folks that know like all the facts of the case because they're there every day. And I think a few of them are retired, so they were able to attend like every minute. And so they were very supportive and helpful. But overall, it was just tough material, obviously, and difficult sitting behind the cops who killed him. Yeah.
Okay. And I did have some questions. First and foremost, I wanted to know, what was the mood like when it was announced that a juror had tested positive for COVID?
Oh my gosh, that was wild because that day was just so chaotic. It was so up and down, and that was the first thing that was said. And I always wear my mask, my K95 mask in there, because it's such a tight space. And we're really crammed in there. But everyone kind of like started looking around like, uh-oh, like, are we all exposed too? Because They said the juror, like, I believe, drove up and said, hey, I tested positive for COVID. So she did like an at-home test, but she still came to the courthouse, which all that's a little confusing, like the specific details of how that happened. But she pulled up and she's like, hey, I tested positive. And so the judge heard about that. He notified the jury. And basically, there was a few minutes where we were like, what's even going to happen? Is he going to postpone? He did bring that up since it was, I mean, back then, it would have been Thanksgiving next week. So even if we postponed, we wouldn't have that much time. And he also said, well, he basically ended up going forward without the juror, which was very shocking to myself and to the community reporters, because there are alternates for a reason. And he neglected to even mention them. And it's very interesting that instead of putting in an alternate so that we have the accurate amount of jurors to have a fair trial and lessen the probability of winning an appeal on either side, he just decided to keep going. That was shocking.
See, and you kind of just wrapped up that answer that I was going to ask you. The follow-up question I was going to say was, how did the judge handle the situation? I feel like you just answered that for us. But I do have another question. In your opinion, how has the judge seemingly been fair to both parties in the court?
So I had heard, or I was told, to be on the lookout for bias in particular with this judge. Of course, we're always on the lookout for that, but I don't think I've personally seen this level of bias like in a court case. Like, I can't remember the last time I've seen it like this. And I watch a lot of court cases. I'm a law and policy major. I'm a nerd like that. And yes, I do watch court TV. That is my thing. Always horrible lighting, by the way, but that's besides the point. Yeah, so I guess the most apparent when you watch the live stream is what is being included and what isn't being included. So Manny's mental health is being included, yet there was a lot of back and forth on like the training of the cops and like what, you know, they were taught to do, what was the procedure for detaining someone. And that was like a back and forth, which you would think it's kind of like, well, that's the whole issue. Like, we should be talking about it. So the fact that the judge like actually like allowed that conflict to even happen between the state and the defendants was just baffling. But he also kind of said some anti-vax stuff, which was pretty surprising. I don't know if y'all caught that. He basically said COVID is overblown. I forgot to add that. Which is very distressing because there are family members of Manny who are immunocompromised. And he said, you know, I can't do anything about that. So if you're worried about getting COVID, I guess you have to watch at home, which was also shocking. But it's really important to be watching this judge carefully because, for example, unprompted, he said about in reference to the rally in Manny's name, I believe happening every Wednesday, he said, quote, "I'm not sure what the rally would be for unless it's trying to influence the jury." This is a rally. We have the First Amendment. We have the right to rally. And he unprompted brought this up, which means he heard about the rally from a different way than being asked about in the courtroom. So then that can lead us to believe that someone has been talking to him and saying, hey, we're worried about this rally. When if it's the defense side, they're supposed to bring that up in court. But unprompted, the judge brought it up. So there's a lot that we don't know about, and it's very concerning. And it's, baffling. Yeah.
And I did want to get Isaiah's input on this part, and I want to know if you have anything to kind of add on to what Faith has said, or you've seen your own things in this.
No, 100%. Everything Faith's saying is basically what I've been noticing as well, especially the bias of the judge. Like, I remember last week, we were talking about our last podcast. We were talking about how there was restrictions on certain words that could be said about the way the prosecution was depicting what happened to Manny. But on like, so there's literally, we're talking about freedom of speech, literally the speech that they're using to describe what actually happened can't even said completely on the prosecution side, but on the defense's side, they're going as far as to let character evidence be a thing now and speak directly about Manny's character and not about what happened to him. So that was one of the biggest things. That's, of course, we expect this bias to be here, but it doesn't mean it's right. And so it really makes my blood boil seeing like, okay, we can't even say that he was hogtied like he was, but they're able to sit here and say he was just this angry, meth addicted, ill person, and that's why he died. So that was one fact. And then I think also the fact that they're bringing in and allowing, as I mentioned earlier, them to talk about prior arrests that happened. So especially as far back as 2015, the incident with him, I believe so, happened in 2020. That's 5 years later, and those officers that arrested him in 2020 have nothing to do with the officers that arrested him in 2015. And basically they're trying to use the accounts of the officers that arrested him in 2015 and 2019 to get a depiction of his like quote unquote anger or like the struggle to like arrest him in 2020. It makes no sense. It's very biased. And so that's kind of what I picked up from the trial, just seeing all these different discrepancies and how one side is being very constrained and the other side is getting allowed to do things that we just don't see happen very often. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, for sure. And I'm going to go ahead and just push forward into our next question. Was there any information that was presented to the jury that you thought wasn't relevant? And we're going back to Faith.
Yeah, and I'm glad Isaiah brought all that up because I did want to touch on that. Yeah, bringing up accounts years prior to try to characterize him, Manny, at the time of his arrest, to try to present like the state of mind he possibly could have been in is just so inaccurate and irrelevant. Like I was just shocked. I was speechless a lot of the times in court, the things that were being brought up, but especially like incidents from his past, and it was just completely irrelevant, especially when they were talking about how he was seeking help. So if you're trying to establish a pattern of behavior, he sought help. Like it's not like he was just continuing, like it wasn't like he didn't even consider getting help and talking with people and, trying to, I don't know, just do as best as he could. He was. And that's why it kind of like in my mind went against what they were trying to present. Like it shows that he's human, when he was alive, he was human. He is human. Like, and they took his humanity away, the way that they talk about him. And he's complex and people struggle with things. That doesn't mean that they deserve to get assassinated by the state, to get executed by the state because someone has struggles. If that were true, then we'd all be dead. So I just couldn't believe how long, especially like those conversations about his mental health and bringing in multiple people talking about like what he was like in therapy. Like I got confused because I'm like, I don't know if that's completely relevant, especially considering the time in between. So that was shocking, like seeing how long that went. Like for hours, they were just talking about these things that were years ago. Yeah.
And I do have a follow-up question for you on that note. Is there any information that you feel or that you were surprised wasn't included in any of the things you've been to?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the fighting over like the police procedure and the resistance to including that was shocking. I thought that would be standard. I thought they would open with that actually, but there are so many things on their side that like I don't even think we've had the opportunity to be like, oh, that would be something good to include because it just gets shot down by the judge immediately. But Isaiah, what do you think? Do you have any other things that you were surprised weren't included?
Similar to you, I feel like there was so much being thrown at us by the defense at times that I wasn't really thinking, and my mind wasn't in like, oh, what is not being included? If there was things, it felt like more things like that were said, but not really like people focused on. So when it came to witness accounts and certain witnesses of that witnessed what happened to Manny, saying that the testaments or statements that they made are not completely accurate. Um, that definitely didn't make sense to me. While we heard that, but we kind of just ran past that. I mean, even when the other officer came in, I forget his name. I have it listed somewhere. But one of the officers who was holding down his leg and is not currently convicted for the crime, but was there when it happened to Manny, he mentions that they clear as day could say and hear him calmly say that he could not breathe within the incident. And that officer who was on the stand is on the side of the defense, but still made it known that like all of them knew that he could not breathe, and everyone just rides past that. And now we're back to talking about, like you said, Manny's therapy sessions from years ago, or like something that happened 5 years ago. I just feel like it's less about, for me, what hasn't been said and more about what's been said, and we just keep riding through like it wasn't even there, and then having a conversation about things that completely are not relevant to what happened to Manny. Yeah, that's what I noticed.
And I would like to add to that. I remember when that cop was called to testify, and he actually, was in the courtroom prior, and they had to ask him to leave because it could be considered witness intimidation. And there have been multiple complaints about witness intimidation from cops who are testifying by cops for witnesses who were testifying on behalf of the state. And yet, once again, the judge did not do anything about that. So I remember that day when he came in, and I agree. It was really weird because he and other witnesses would provide information that would just get kind of thrown away or be confusing because of like everything thrown at us. Which, again, with the defense, it was weird because they opened and they talked about how qualified these officers are, and yet here we are. So like, if they're so qualified, then that bar should be higher, because if they got all these awards and they're so great, they're so amazing, then why are we here? Because then allegedly they should be trained better or they know better. So there's no excuse. So I'm surprised more of that didn't come back, especially when the defense brought that up, like their histories as cops.
Oh, my bad. I do have 2 more questions. This next one is, what was it like attending court in person with the family of Manuel Ellis sitting across the room?
Yeah. I mean, it was horrible. Like I just got so angry at times, and we would have a break and I would just get up and pace and like be watching over them and just seeing them cry, and lean on each other, and just like knowing, like, I'm sure they're obviously, I mean, we cling onto hope, and we really hope that this trial will be done right. But then, considering in the country we live in, we already know how it could be, and most likely will be, when we are dealing with the police and with a Black victim. So I just can't imagine like the complex feelings of, I hope this works out somehow, yet being dragged through every minute, seeing all the missteps by the judge, seeing the institution not advocate for the real victim here, which is Manny, and just completely stomp on that hope every single day. And when we get the ruling, that's when it will be a time of reckoning, because after all that, it better have been worth something. But I personally am concerned about where it's going to go based on this judge in particular. And yeah, just seeing how the judge even looked at the family, and he talked to them about the rally, trying to dissuade them from having a rally. He even admitted, it's your First Amendment right. But then he said, quote, "There's a time and a place. This isn't it to have a rally." My jaw dropped, and I think all the other reporters beside me were just like speechless. And then we had a recess, and we just like stood up and just like, oh my gosh. And then it's like, you want to leave, but then at the same time it's like, okay, if I leave, then I don't know, maybe like I feel like we should be watching this and witnessing it, to make sure that Manny isn't forgotten, and try to advocate as best we can, because we're seeing real time how bias works in the system and how messed up it really is, and how it can harm so many people and be so obvious, and people don't know what to do about it, and that's horrible.
And Isaiah, did you get to go to any in-persons? My bad.
No, good. Thank you for asking. I haven't been to be in person yet, but I am happy that Faith mentioned what she mentioned, because this is a real family and real people. A lot of the time, if you're not physically there in person and you watch it on TV, we lose. There's a disconnect, and there's a desensitization that happens consistently with looking at murder cases that happen with this. And so I really appreciate you, Faith, saying what you're saying, because his family, his mom, his brothers, his sister, everybody is over there crying while this bigotry and this racism happens on the stand and in the courtroom. And I feel like just being Black people, like with dehumanization, it's desensitization. That's the key to it. And I just, it frustrates me, because how could people be around a family, see a situation for what it is, and see them suffering at that, and then be more than okay with not just overlooking what happened, but like lying about it and trying to change the narrative and vilify their son that was murdered. I think that's the biggest thing here that's been like baffling me, is like the vilification of Manny Ellis and the harrowing of the police officers, making them seem like they were these people that stopped this angry aggressor that was a threat, which could not be further from the truth. So yeah, I definitely intend to be at some of the upcoming trials, hopefully. But yeah, we got to remember, guys, these are real people. So as we're saying this, just a reminder, anybody listening, definitely check out the GoFundMe link. It will 100% help the family with everything they're going through, which we talked on a bit last week.
I appreciate that. Okay. So I do have my final question is, besides or alongside of that shocking moment, are there any other shocking moments that you've witnessed while attending the in-person trials?
Yeah. I will go further into detail about what the judge said about the rally for Manny. And I wrote down his quotes, which I went into I was just so shocked when he said this. I couldn't believe it. This is recorded. This is on record. Keep in mind. Quote, "We don't want to do this again," meaning the trial, because if it's not done right and comes back from the courts of appeal, nobody wants that. So if somebody is outside the courtroom making noises such that the jury can hear, It scares the jurors, and that affects the integrity of the outcome. When he said that, just shocking. Yeah. No jurors have complained, by the way, about these rallies. So once again, where is this coming from? And if it is coming from the defense side, they ought to present that issue in court, in public. That's how it ought to be. But, you know, people ought not to get murdered by the police, but here we are. And yeah, I think that was just the most shocking. And he looked at the family, like insinuating if a rally continues, even if, by the way, they said that they had no part in like planning it. He asked the state, which was very odd, very, very odd. He asked the state to answer for a rally that they never claimed to have created. But he looked at the family and said, we don't want to do this again. This would make this court case be able to be appealed. As if all of the other things that he has done doesn't already make it worthy of appeal. Honestly, mistrial at this point, I would say. But I think the important thing overall is that even when someone like a judge is saying that rallies, what's the point? It's good to remember that they are the most powerful forms of resistance and protest. And there's a reason why the judge brought it up unprompted in a courtroom, because he knows how powerful protests and just marching and just doing actions in someone's name, he knows how powerful that can be. And so I think that's just a testament to the power of the people. And I hope we don't forget that. And if anything, I hope we go harder.
And that concludes my questions. I do appreciate you guys' responses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would also like to share some good news. Initiative number 1, the Tacoma Bill of Rights was passed in this last election. Very close. It was so close. I was checking like every day. It passed with 21,884 votes, and at 50.42%. That's so close. That is like such a tight race. So thank you for everyone who voted for that. And IBJ is obviously proud to have endorsed this. This will build up like protections around evictions, do some rent control, provide resources for folks that may be moving due to the rent. And it's just a great initiative. I'm so proud of everybody who got out there and voted. And if you want to keep up to date, please reach out to Tacoma for All and follow them wherever they are, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and make sure to keep on working for tenants' rights, because it's never over. But at least we have this good news.
Thank you, Faith, for telling us about it. That's exciting, yo, because that's going to help people from Tacoma stay in Tacoma. I think anybody who lives in Tacoma understands that it looks a lot different than it did 10 years ago. And a lot of new people that we haven't seen before have started coming inside. So I love that we can keep our Black and brown communities together. Thank you, Queleah, for your amazing questions. It's so nice to have you on. And it's been great to talk about Manny today. I hope you guys listened and really got our informational session, feel more informed about what's been going on. And we just encourage you, if you're not able to make the trial, go to YouTube, watch it. If you're able to help Manny's family, go to the link, the GoFundMe link, and help his family that way if you're looking for a way of doing that. But yeah, we just ask you to keep following IBJ. Have a great Thanksgiving, and thank you all for listening.